Imagine when you share your darkest hours, they become someone else's light. I'm Jennifer Lee, a global community storyteller, host, author, and survivor, guiding you through genuine, unfiltered conversations. Together, we break the silence, shatter stigma, and amplify voices that need to be heard. Each episode stands as a testament to survival, healing, and reclaiming your power. Listen to I Need Blue on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite platform. Learn more at www.ineedblue.net. Trigger warning: I Need Blue shares real-life stories of trauma, violence, and abuse meant to empower and support. Please take care of yourself and ask for help if needed. Now let's begin today's story. Barbara grew up with a constant sense of not quite fitting in. Like many of us, she longed to find her place within her family, but that sense of belonging never came. She believed that through marriage, she could finally create the space where she truly felt at home. But that didn't happen. Instead, the marriage slowly unraveled, and years later, in the thick of a bitter divorce, Barbara found herself trapped in a nightmare no parent should ever have to endure. Fighting not just for custody, but for the hearts and minds of her children. Parental alienation isn't just painful, it's soul-stealing, and Barbara bore the weight of it alone. Isolated, muzzled, shamed, the court system dismissed her pleas, strangers' words held more weight than hers. And when she begged the medical system to listen, "Something is going to happen to my daughter. I don't know what it is, but I feel it in my soul," they brushed her off with protocol and indifference. 3 days later, her daughter took her own life. No mother should have to live with that kind of agony. No mother should have to scream into silence and still go unheard. Barbara's story is devastatingly unique, yet echoes a pattern of generational trauma, manipulation, and grief too many carry quietly. And yet every time I've sat with Barbara, what I felt isn't bitterness. It's grace, strength, compassion. A woman who has walked through hell and somehow still carries a light to show others the way out. I'm honored to introduce today's guest, Barbara, a wellness advocate, speaker, author, and trainer who specializes in nutriogenomics and emotional wellness. She empowers others to heal through prevention, resilience, and self-discovery. After surviving the unthinkable, Barbara now lives with purpose and shows others how to transform pain into possibility. Her message is clear. You can soar above the fray. You can build a future that honors your scars and carries your wisdom forward. Barbara, thank you for being my friend, and thank you for being my guest on the I Need Blue podcast.
Jen, thank you so much for having me on. My heart is full, and I'm so grateful to get to know you better and all the wonderful work that you do.
Of course. How are you today?
I feel so full today. It's a beautiful day here in Florida, and I feel so grateful for this opportunity to tell my story. It's hopefully helping others, and really it honors my daughter's life and helps me move forward with the work that I feel I'm being called to do.
Absolutely. What is your daughter's name?
My daughter's name was Erin, and here we have this big hurricane, Erin, happening right now. It went all the way to Category 5, and my daughter was sort of bigger than life. And it's the second time that we've had this storm. Actually, the last time there was a Hurricane Erin, she was still with us, and I'd just gotten divorced and was in the house, and a tree fell on my master bedroom roof while we were all huddled on my bed.
And so, like you said, it is so ironic that right now we have this force of nature out there, and but you and I also get to honor Aaron. So, what a beautiful parallel, right?
Yeah, it has brought me to a whole different, viewpoint of life and death and life cycles, and I'm so grateful today as I think through this that I get to talk about my daughter. My family, they don't really talk about my daughter or bring up anything, and so to be able to freely even speak about my daughter.
Barbara, I can't really imagine not being able to talk about your daughter with your family and relive memories. Since you brought up family, let's touch upon that for a moment before we get into the rest of your story. You mentioned not feeling like you fit in.
I think my parents felt like their job was to create you who you're supposed to be in their image of what they wanted you to be by creating you. I'm the oldest, and every birthday up until even in my 60s, my mother would be like, "You were a colicky baby." That's her first memory is like, I was trouble, I was a pain. Both of my girls were colicky babies, and it's miserable. My dad told me before he passed away, our neighbor, an elderly woman, Mrs. Butler, took care of me so much, and I wish now that I'd asked more questions. So I don't think I ever bonded with my mother. Maybe you weren't ready to have a baby yet. Maybe he pushed himself on you that night. Maybe there's something there. And so I felt that my whole life. And then I started judging myself. Okay, I have this rift with parental alienation, and I have that with my own mom. I'm willing to look at my part, but also sometimes things are circumstances and you're breaking the mold and changing things. And that's been a conflict for me, I think. What role in this do I play? Am I really causing this? We create our life. We also have to be ourselves. And when you're trying to be something that you're not or that somebody else wants you to be, it just doesn't work.
You said not long ago that you kind of asked yourself questions like maybe your mom wasn't ready to have a child. You may never get answers to those questions. How does that make you feel? How do you process that?
My family's not an open dialogue communication family. I remember having this wonderful conversation with my dad. Oh my gosh, we communicated so beautifully. I got off the phone after an hour being like, that's the most meaningful conversation we've ever had. And then I got a letter from him saying it's dangerous to communicate in our family. And I was brokenhearted. That gave me enough information. Yes, I had validation that I'm not crazy in feeling that I don't belong. I really haven't belonged. And she created that in the family. Then I had compassion because most of us, when we have a child, you're just so filled with love and joy that I have compassion that she doesn't know how to love. She can't love. They were born, during the depression time and everything, and as first generation immigrants, and so their childhood was different. So I have some understanding, and I know I'll never know. It's maybe not for me to know, but I did convey and write a letter saying that I was created in the image and likeness of God. I'm meant to be here. I was created to be here.
Absolutely, you are meant to be here. Now, I know not that long ago, you had a conversation with your mom where you took your power back and you used your voice. Can you share that with us?
So at my dad's burial, my dad was supposed to be buried in Florida. He had a plot, and a Polish priest convinced my mom to send him up to Pennsylvania to the Polish cathedral and everything. And I even supported my mother, even though I'm like, that's his will. You just changed his will. So she didn't like how I parked. I was trying to help her find where she had to pay for everything, whatever. There's this huge, beautiful cathedral, and she starts shaming me in front of tourists and everything. And I had made a decision, I will never be abused by another person, whoever they are, after I got divorced. I will never allow that happen to me again. So I said, "I will not be shamed." And then she told me, "You never should have been born." I was 65 years old. And so then I went, "Okay, I've tried everything to communicate with you. I'm cutting the cord." And I have felt like I'm a key to breaking generational trauma.
The generational trauma, it continues until we recognize, oh, there's an issue, right? What traits of the childhood generational trauma did you carry with you into your marriage and raising your children?
A great question. Staying in a relationship, I was trying to make it work, and we were Catholic, and my parents said this isn't going to work, and I was going to prove everyone wrong. And then I stayed too long. That's one of my lessons to others is I tried to make it work for too long. And we know we get depleted when you're dealing with emotional abuse and all of those circumstances.
Thank you for sharing. Now, ultimately, your marriage did end up in divorce, and you find yourself in a parental alienation situation.
One of my superpowers is seeing behavior. So in my marriage, I was seeing that, making fun of mom, pushing mom out to the side, sort of, we've got this and it's us. And my former husband was so involved in their lives, and I worked part-time, and he was a college professor, so he would watch them. He was a really special dad. I never could have imagined anything like this happening, but narcissistic behavior is so, prevalent and so insidious. At that time, there was no internet, there weren't cell phones, the knowledge of things were not available. I used to say I have a controlling husband and blah, blah. But then I was getting so depleted and beaten down. I was like, and I don't want my daughters feeling like they could be treated this way. So those seeds had already started. And then he wouldn't take them for visitation. He was playing all these games with them. And I was aware that that was happening. And I sought professionals, but not many people talked about parental alienation. What happens is, children get radicalized very quickly. Happens very fast. I thought that I would be working in that area and being a support for others, but it's so dark and so painful and so much loss, and the steps are so tiny if anyone ever is able to escape it. It's really cult behavior. So they're radicalized, they're trauma bonded to the perpetrator. The collateral damage is our children. And also, it's been shown that it's 9 generations deep. You're teaching generational behavior.
When you said that the children are radicalized, can you tell me what some of those behaviors look like?
They become very afraid of the other parent, so they're always judging that they have to be doing what the other person says. So I'll give you an example. Well, my former husband said, "I'll never go anywhere you go, see anyone you see, talk to anyone you talk to." Okay, well, our children are like 8 and 10. This is a big problem. I know for me, I didn't have the strength and the knowledge at that time. So the isolation and what are other moms thinking? What are other parents thinking? It was sort of paralyzing. And my youngest, Erin, came and said, "You can't go to 8th grade graduation. Dad's going to go." I said, "I didn't make that rule. That's not, you can't go. Dad's going to be there. You're not allowed to go if dad's there." You're put in this situation. And I kept thinking, what's best for my child? Them in the middle of this situation, but I need to set my boundary. And even when my oldest daughter, I had moved away from Orlando and I drove down, I think it was, I can't remember if it was my birthday or her birthday, and our place to go was First Watch. And that was very new at the time. There's one in Winter Park. So I drove like 2 hours from where I was living to go see her. And we're driving together and she pulls in the parking lot. She was driving and she's like, "Oh my God, dad's car's here. We can't go." And I'm like, "No, I don't have to live by that rule." So they're just so panic stricken. They're myopic. And, since I've worked in this area, I've heard so many stories and I've learned from the adult children that the light bulb went on and they realized what happened to them and they're angry. There's somebody on TikTok right now as a daughter realizing that her father was not a monster, that for 20 years she was led to believe. It's horrible and it's growing worldwide. It is so widespread. It's like our children are an asset, and people don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. It's deprogramming somebody like from a cult.
When your children would go into a panic because they saw your dad's car at first watch, did they ever say what would happen to them if you actually go in and saw him?
They really didn't, I don't think there was anything physical. But I think emotionally, I know how he operated with me in my situations. So they were afraid to talk to me. They're afraid to have a relationship with me. Each situation I think is somewhat different, but it's really mind control. And I wasn't allowed to have my voice, and you don't know why. I was there when my grandson was born in the hospital, and I was always tiptoeing around my daughter because it felt uncomfortable, and I took care of him for 3 years. Every time she needed me, I'd drive 2 hours, and she's a nurse anesthetist, and she'd have to be in the hospital, and her husband would travel or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're cut off and there's no explanation, there's no reasoning, and that's a common denominator. You
Right.
don't know why, you don't have answers, you can't figure it out, there's nothing you can do. But the lesson I learned is I'm not giving myself up and I am going to be me and not try to turn into Jekyll and Hyde all the time, trying to figure out how I can have a relationship with you.
Let's talk about Erin.
She was brilliant, and she was an incredible writer and storyteller, but she had, like, no emotional words.
Did your daughter's dad recognize that there was a problem? Like, was he on the same page with you of, oh, what is going on? We got to get help?
No. My ex-husband kept blocking her from getting the help she needed. I got her court ordered for counseling, and he told her she didn't have to share her feelings, you don't have to tell anybody anything, which made me very suspicious. And finally, I think he realized that things were really going south. And finally, she got to see a juvenile therapist. She would go, I'm sad, mad, or glad. Like she had no verbiage for emotional things. And so I had to set a timer and make her, you can't watch Full House unless you're in our session at the dining room table for 25 minutes or something. I just went to such length. Who else can I call? What can I do? Is there something I missed? I don't think she was an indigo child, but she was a really different child. She was really in a bad space when she decided to do what she did. She was bipolar. No one really talked about bipolar. I kept looking for patterns. She was really unhappy as a human. I have a much closer spiritual connection with her than in her human form. So I had this knowingness that she came here to do what she was meant to do, and it was time for her to leave, and she passed me a baton. And that's why I feel grateful to be able to even talk about these issues to help others because I feel like that's my mission. And she's working from the other side, and she's so happy. Every message I get from someone that can feel her energy is she is so happy. And I think that's a message that I try to convey to other people, people that have had loss, that you get to have joy again. I didn't know if I'd ever get to feel joy again in my life, but that's our job is to move on. And however that looks like for us, to be able to find joy and life became more meaningful to me.
Now, you know she's with you every day, every minute of the day, where when you go through the parental alienation, that's a very lonely, frustrating situation. You can't control it, right? Not being able to control it is gone because now she's just there. She's always just there. What do you remember of your last conversation with Erin?
Well, she wouldn't talk to me, so I showed up at that therapist's office. I was standing in the lobby, it was a small lobby, and she was waiting for her appointment, and then she went in, and when she came out, my last words to her were, "I love you. You either got her or you didn't." She was she was just oh my gosh, she just had such imagination and creativity, And one time she and her friend, I think they were like in 6th grade or 7th grade, like, she was very sensitive, and there was a home for domestic violence, but she and her friend wanted to make a Halloween party for all the children at this center, and they made up games, and they enlisted some other kids, and they put goodie bags and all these things together. I remember talking to the center saying, "We don't want anyone coming in doing, like, one thing because then the children get excited and they have an expectation, so will they be back at Christmas or Easter or other times?" And I'm just so proud of her for really rallying and doing things. And then, one of our neighbors that they were having a big crawfish boil type of thing, and she had rescued one of the crawfish and went to the pond, to put that crawfish in that pond.
I
You
love
know,
that.
she was just this unique child. I embraced it.
There's a lot of stereotypes that go along with suicide, and sometimes parents take the brunt of it. Why did you do nothing? Why didn't you see the signs? How did you not know? What would you say to those people who think that?
One thing that I felt, and I share with this with other people that are in circumstances, is that I know I did everything that I could. I put myself in danger. I sacrificed myself trying to get help for my daughter. And I remember even my therapist saying, "Barbara, we've done everything that we can do. If there's anything else I could even think of to do, we would be doing it." I am so conscious of not having regrets, and that helped me accept things easier. I was fighting with her father to get her help. I had a counselor come into my house because I couldn't get her in the car to go. Or if I did, like, I would have to do things like, "I'm sorry, you cannot have your new PE shoes, sneakers, unless we go to this appointment." And a lot of therapists are not skilled enough to try to even reach that person. And it's like, I can't do anything. She's not going to open up or talk to me. So I knew her behavior was not appropriate. I knew she wasn't on drugs, and then when she saw this therapist finally 4 times, I felt like, "Oh, thank God," and I would even go there and sit while she wouldn't speak to me because her father had started alienating me from them, so they were afraid to talk to me, they were afraid to have a relationship with me, but I was like, "I'm always there," could never push me away. When I came to, then the Palm Beach area, I was living in Jupiter, I realized even though it'd been years, I go, I need to go and be with other surviving people from suicide. And one, I can tell them that you will go on and there will be life. And also, I need it. There's unresolved things that I haven't dealt with. You're never done. I heard so many stories, and that's the one thing is that I live with myself because I did everything I could, and somebody has free will, and in the end, she had free will.
What resources have you been able to find to help with your grief?
Yeah, and, it was really hard for me. I kept thinking that for some reason, God kept removing people in my life that were a resource for me, and I'll give you an example. The night that this happened, it was a Saturday night. When I got called to my former husband's house, it's like, "You better get over here really quick." It happened in his house. There really wasn't anyone. In fact, the police officer woman said, "Do you want me to stay with you tonight?" And, I really didn't want that. I'd been working very closely with a therapist. My daughter was having troubles, and we were working together. We had thought that she took a turn for the better. And he left on a cruise, no cell phone, no contact. So here's the person that I'd been leaning on and working with who wasn't even available. And by the time he got back, I had to go through that whole thing again because he was in shock. We had already had a funeral. This happened in Orlando. And I reached out to the survivor of suicide group. And they said, "Well, we want you to know that your former husband is coming to our group." And that was the only group in Orlando. So I felt cut off from that. So everywhere I sort of was turning, I didn't really have a lot of support. And it wasn't until 6 months later that someone shared with me an organization called Compassionate Friends, and it's for parents who have lost a child. And so that was very helpful. But when you're dealing also with a suicide death, it's a different form of death, and so you're with, parents, maybe there was a car accident, maybe there was an illness, but there's just all these questions and a different dynamics you can hear in my voice, attached to, someone taking their life. This happened, over 20 years ago, so the stigma then too was very different, and so even parents, this comes on your family. There's a big ripple effect if people wanna remove themselves. Like, I remember my daughter was 15, and my mother saying, "Well, I just really didn't know her." They wanna distance themselves unless you have a family that really is a comforting type of family. So I really walked through this alone, holding other people up, having the courage for other people. A really special thing did happen, and that was that my neighbors had a fundraiser, and one of them had suggested putting a park bench on the pond. It was behind my house. There was already another bench there for someone who lost their child. He was in his early 20s and had lost the battle with cancer. And I would always pause at that bench, and it was in front of the person's house across from the pond. I'm so grateful to have a place to go, and I was so grateful to my neighbors for doing that for me and having a legacy and a posterity. And I will often drive, or I feel a need to drive to it's in Winter Park in Orlando. This happened a couple weeks ago. I was sitting on the bench. Some young people came up, and I said, "This is my daughter's bench. I used to live here." And I've met people on the bench, and I even created a little bit of a YouTube stories from the bench. A woman was in a near neighborhood, had become a minister with the Episcopal Church and started a grief group. So they reached out to me and they said, you need at least 6 months' time before really coming to something like that. They had to ask me to leave the group because I couldn't speak my truth. I really wasn't welcome in that group because a suicide death is so different. There's so many unanswered questions. So at that time, I was very angry, very much in grief and not being able to save my child and no one listening to me.
How is your relationship with your other daughter today?
She just cut me off. When I talk about courage, I'll give you an example. There's a big Polish ball in Miami Beach. It just had its 50th anniversary. My father passed away, but my mother bought a table for us. And then all of a sudden, my daughter showed up. My siblings never told me that my daughter was coming, and my sister brought her. And I'm at this table, but she didn't want me to sit next to her, to be there in that space, to not show anger and animosity, to have to rise above the occasion. I don't think people, even my siblings, have no idea what that takes. I wish there would be open, but the ball's in her court. And then I had called my former son-in-law a couple years ago, and I said, "Can I send some gifts to my grandson, and you can give them to him so he knows that I haven't forgotten him and that I love him?" And so I was doing that, and then, my daughter called me and I was manipulative, and I'm this and I'm that, and so I thought, "I don't wanna create any problems for my grandson." I've had to distance myself and almost detach from all of that emotion and say, "I want her to be happy," and for some reason, I think that she wants to inflict hurt and pain on me. It's her stuff. I've done all this work. She hasn't done the work. And so I have compassion, but it's so painful. And Erin tells me, she goes, "Mom, I'm sorry. Danielle is being fed the wrong information from the wrong people. And I know you want this to be better, but I'm sorry, it's not going to be better. I
Yeah.
don't know when, but we're all working on it."
Absolutely. And you know what? We're going to pray that the positive person, that the right person comes in for your daughter, but we're also gonna pray that her ears are open and
Yes, that's what I
receptive
pray.
to it.
And so as a mother, I hope her lessons are soft. I hope she isn't hit hard. I mean, that's my child. I don't want that to have to happen. And you don't act like this if you're happy. So I know that she has to be in pain. So I'm always praying and hoping that, something will come through so she realized how loved she is and can open those channels.
Absolutely. So today you are a wellness advocate, an author, a speaker.
Yeah, so, as I said, at first I thought I was gonna be enmeshed with the parental alienation and taking over a Facebook group, but that's where Soar Above the Fray came from. So, I've taken a number of different workshops and stuff, and then all of a sudden being cut off by my daughter, and I knew that day could come, so every time that I was with my grandson, I hugged and infused, and I know they'll have emotional memory. When we talk about life lessons and generational trauma and things, and Erin came to do what she had to do. I feel that way also. I've had to come to terms with and let go of. I've done everything I can do to try to have a relationship with my daughter and my grandson. I just thought, I can't get in the way of whatever life lessons she has to go through, and I just have to stop and get out of the picture and soar above the fray, and that is helping other people with things I wished I had known so I could have done a better job or not made some of the mistakes I made. My goal is to help mitigate the trauma, so I've developed a course for women going through divorce with children to help during that time period of divorce, not to go deep because there's too much going on. You're trying to figure out how you're going to financially survive or keep your job or be there for your children. But there are things that you need to be doing and being aware of. And even one is to start sowing the seeds of forgiveness because you're trapped by that other person or the circumstances. If you don't start forgiving and having compassion, we're responsible for some part of it, even if it's 3%. And also, I have a membership group that I'm starting called Own Your Life. No matter what's happened to you as women, maybe you lost everything in a flood, maybe a fire, maybe you're an empty nester now or divorced after 50 years of marriage. Who are you now? And support each other in a positive way and not victimhood. It's moving forward and being there for each other.
Yeah, and we'll have the links to those, to everything that you do. We'll have it all in the show notes. Barbara, thank you for being my guest today on the I Need Blue podcast.
Thank you for such a stimulating conversation that was in areas I never thought we would even be delving into. But thank you so much.